to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured.
It's disingenuous. It's disingenuous.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Joining us now, a frequent guest on Fox News, Republican presidential candidate and tech entrepreneur, Vivek RamaSwamy. So we are happy to have you on. I'm going to talk to you more than just about Fox News. But good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be
here.
here.
What do you make of this decision to settle this case?
I mean, it strikes me as a cost of doing business. If you're going to be a news network, I think it's happened to CNN. I think it's happened to a lot of news networks.
That has not
happened. It's a cost of doing business.
That has not happened to CNN. This is
never been sued for defamation. Never been actually settled.
This is the largest
it's definitely
in
large,
history.
and Fox appears to have the largest viewership
Hold
and
up.
market capital.
Fox News settles with Dominion for $787 million dispute over 2020 election lies. So from this, what am I saying? I mean, what am I seeing here? Is Fox News being sued for $787 for lying in the election? Is that what's happening? Somebody comment down below.
So I'm not familiar with the details of this case. I'm actually more interested in issues relating to this country than disputes with media companies. But I will say that it strikes me that from CNN to Fox News.
You're not familiar with the case. You're not familiar with the lies about the 2020 election, about the election being stolen, that Dominion was somehow, fixing the votes. I mean, that's
Dominion was fixing
$787.5 million. You're not familiar with that? And you're running for president?
The details of a private dispute between a commercial dispute and the details of what the dollar figures are, that's not where I spend. That's really not where I spend my time. But what I will say is, look, there's defamation cases. People settle businesses. If you settle business disputes, Fox settled this one. It's actually not, I think, the pressing issue for the nation of what Fox News' settlement is.
I disagree with that because as you just admitted, you said Fox is the largest viewership, one of the largest viewerships among television networks, and especially cable networks, considering the eyes, the American people who are tuning in to Fox News to get their information and to get it accurately. I'm surprised that you would say that you're not concerned about this, and this is not something that is hugely pressing for the American people.
Here's the way I look at it.
Freedom of the press is the First Amendment in the Constitution.
Oh, exactly. You nailed it. The freedom of the press. So we have CNN, we have Fox. I'm here with you guys. I go on Fox News. I think that's great that we have a marketplace of ideas in this country. What I worry more about, Don, is the trend that we see in this country to controlling what different parties are actually able to say. The American way to bad speech is more speech. And so I think we need to actually embrace that culture and a more diverse marketplace of ideas.
Vivek,
that's something we haven't done well enough in this country.
With all honesty, you're not answering the question. You're giving us platitudes about...
I'm actually unsure what your question is, Don. Do you want some...
I'm honestly unsure what the question is, too. From what he just said, freedom of speech, that's what they were referring to, is the number one thing that we should be focusing on as the American people, such as being able to say whatever you want, whenever you want, without avail to public scrutiny. You can get publicly scrutinized because that's also technically freedom of speech. What you shouldn't be able to do is get canceled in a way. So I think that's an obvious agreement on, that's Don Lemon's stance from Vivek. I don't really know how to pronounce his name. From Vivek. So Don Lemon should have then and there said, like, okay, I agree with you. And then made his question clearer, because even me as the viewer, I don't really understand what he's asking. And I'm trying to pay attention. But honestly, y'all, I don't understand what he's asking right now. So
somebody bash Fox News on CNN.
I'm not
if that does you favors, then I'd be happy to do that.
I'm not asking you to bash Fox News. I'm asking you to be honest about what happened on Fox News, about the lies that were told, and them having to admit the lies and paying the largest defamation settlement to a media company in history, and you are a frequent guest on that network. Are you concerned about the credibility? Are you going to continue to go on that network even with those credibility issues?
I have far more concerns with the credibility of what we will call the mainstream media than I do with the credibility of Fox News. But
Fox is the mainstream media.
At the end of the day, what I say is, look, neither you nor I know the details because they settled it before it went to trial. I think the obsession over this is a little weird.
Vivek, listen,
it's a little bizarre.
Okay, I see what's going on. So they're on CNN right now, and Don Lemon is trying to make Vivek scrutinize Fox News for settling a $787 million dispute. What Vivek is trying not to do is saying, well, I don't really focus on things like that. Let's focus on social media and how freedom of speech is practically disappearing from online platforms. And Don Lemon is saying, no, I don't want to talk about that. I want you to talk about what I want to talk about, which ironically goes against freedom of speech in a way. So it's kind of interesting to watch their to watch their back and forth, man.
I want to get into that.
There's real issues to talk about in the country. Why are we talking about Fox News and the settlement?
This is a very big and important story. And I'm not going to, we have much more that we want to talk
I think we should.
about, but we will get there when we're ready to get there. We have you on to talk about these issues. This is a very important issue, and it should not be downplayed. This has to do with American democracy and Americans learning the truth about what happened in the 2020 election.
You want to know what?
You don't think that's
I hear
important?
this. I hear a lot
And
about
comparing it to CNN is not. This apples and oranges. It's not the same thing.
Well, it's different networks. Yes, apples aren't the same as oranges. You get one view through CNN, you get a different view through Fox News. I think that's good in our marketplace of ideas is that we have media that offers diverse perspectives. And you want to talk about threats to our democracy? One of the threats, and that phrase is an interesting one, threats to our democracy. I think one of the biggest ones is the chilling effect on speech in our country more broadly, where if somebody says something that a broad segment of the population or certain people in the government disagree with, there's an increasing trend in our country to silence that. And the answer to bad speech and alleged misinformation is not less speech. It is more speech in the marketplace of ideas. That's actually what a free press really means.
We're going to move on, but your answer was good, but it's not about what's actually happened. It's not relevant to what's happening. I think the answer to what happened at Fox News is to tell the truth. Media companies are tasked with telling the truth. That did not happen in the situation, and that's why we're asking these questions. But let's move on.
Let's talk more about a diverse exchange of ideas. That's what
Are media companies tasked with telling the truth? By that statement, you're implying that you always tell the truth. I don't know you. I don't know nothing about politics. However, I do know media companies do not always tell the truth. The main objective of a media company, obviously, is to spread their agenda, which Vivek implied earlier. He said you can hear the same thing from different point of views or standpoints or something similar to that. It's like apples and oranges. You're comparing what they say to that say. It could be the same substance, but the way you say it matters. It changes the whole objective of what you're trying to get across to your viewers. So for a media company, your main objective, if that's the case, is not to tell the truth, because if that was the case, everyone would be saying the same thing to like all the time. Every company would be saying the same thing. It'd be one company.
I'm in for. Thank you.
Glad you're here this morning. Your campaign slogan is a new American dream, and I was reading through your platform last night. I wonder what you would do specifically to actually bring us together, not just Republicans and Democrats. What does unity look like to you, Vivek, for rich and poor, for rural and urban, for Republicans and Democrats?
That is the right question to be asking. And I think the main divide in this country, and I say this to conservative audiences equally, is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between those of us who are pro-American, embracing the ideals that set this country into motion, and I think an increasing strain in this country that is anti-American, that wishes to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals. But that's not a 50-50 split. I think most people are in the pro-American camp. And Poppy, I think one of the ways they would say we get to national unity, some people think, is by showing up in the middle and compromising. I respect that view, but I reject it.
You reject compromise?
I reject compromising on our principles. I think that the right way to get to national unity, and I mean this, to unite this country, is by embracing actually the radicalism of the American ideals themselves. We celebrate our diversity and differences. I'm glad we have some 3 different shades of melanin on this set right now, 2 different genders. That's fine, but what I say is, so what? That diversity is meaningless unless there's something greater that binds us together, that unites us across that diversity. And I'm running for president to revive those ideals that bind us together across our diverse attributes.
It's crazy because what he's saying is is actually kind of controversial, which is the craziest thing ever. You would think it'd be normal, like to just randomly say, yeah, I want everyone to be able to say whatever they want, despite the color they are or the gender they are. But that's a controversial take. You have to kind of tiptoe around that that idea. But obviously, I think it's just a normal thing to say. I don't really see anything wrong with what he's saying.
I want to get into a few issues, one of them being China. Before I get to China, I just want to better understand something you said this week speaking before the audience at the NRA. Here's what you said, referring to back to 1865. Here it was.
I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party.
I did not know
Who
that.
and what were you referring to?
I was referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of black kids were born into two-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping black Americans have actually been disastrous for black Americans and all Americans.
That's facts. That's facts, bro. And I don't care what nobody say. That's true. And that's true based off of the numbers that our community has in comparison to other communities. Like he said, 70% of children were born under two-parent households. What's the percent again? He said, I don't even remember. But it's at least half of what it was. How is that a good thing? And the only common denominator between all black people in America is two things. Is our skin color, obviously, and our government. So does not obviously mean the government is signing bills or laws that disproportionately affect the African American community and make it worse for us. Wouldn't that be true? Like, that's just an obvious statement.
And I think that that's something that we need to wake up to.
In 1865, you were talking about the black codes, right?
That's right.
Passed, enacted to make it a crime for a black person to carry a gun
Exactly.
in the South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic chains? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party.
You just said that about Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black Americans back.
The war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular, his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family, where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home.
That's
Guess
true.
What you get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
What, do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but
You're a black man, Don Lemon. I don't know you. But you're saying you don't see what one has to do with the other. How could you not see what one has to do with the other? Like, you're purposefully trying to misinterpret what he's saying, and that's not arguing in good faith. That's not communicating in good faith. You know exactly what he's saying. You know exactly what one has to do with the other. I don't understand how you don't. That a child could see what one has to do with the other.
go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox.
Oh, it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially consider and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black people to have freedoms in this country.
Yeah.
Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad
that
part
wasn't
about
fought for black people to have guns. I think.
No, you're misinterpreting what he's saying. He's saying that it was fought for freedom, and a byproduct of the freedom was African Americans to have access to weapons or guns. That's what he's saying. It's not, obviously it wasn't fought just for African Americans to have guns. Like, that's not the purpose of the war. It was fought to have freedoms, and a byproduct of freedom is the freedom to carry.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned it.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. Obviously, racism exists. But to sit here and say we don't enjoy the freedoms in America, it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous. I'm sitting here right now enjoying the freedoms. I'm literally sitting here right now enjoying the freedoms, man. Like, I'm living proof that you can enjoy the freedoms. You're living proof that you can enjoy the freedoms. You're sitting on the same stage that he's sitting on, regardless of if it took more effort to get there. I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your experiences. However, you said until you're in black skin, you cannot deny what you're saying. You're sitting on the same stage as him. I'm doing the same video as you. In a nice neighborhood, nice house. Yes, you can enjoy the same freedoms. But to say you can't, I don't agree, man. I don't agree.
And yet that
I
we have
disagree.
three different shades
Don, I
of
think we have to be
melanin
able to
here.
talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to
absolutely
1865 and
have equal rights
1964
in this
is
country.
actually, I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong. What
part of the history was wrong?
What
What part of the history was wrong?
That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have.
The Civil War was fought for
rights.
black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it.
I will say this. The civil rights was for African Americans to get freedom. However, you could argue that the intent behind the freedom wasn't fully moral. You can argue that the intent behind the freedom the intent behind the war, I meant, wasn't completely ethical. You can argue that. But to argue that it wasn't for African Americans' freedom is not true. But you could say that the ethical reasoning behind the war was a little immoral or was a little shaky. You could say that.
In a speech at the NRA, to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a
that's
fact.
reductive.
It's not
and
reductive,
I think it's
Don.
insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I
including-
find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was
Black
part
people,
of what
hang
secured
on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They
That's
were
a
not
fact.
secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not. You are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they
after the
got
Civil
it?
War
They got their
and
Second Amendment
Reconstruction.
rights, and they actually got the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role
absolutely,
in
they
that.
trained
That
black Americans
is
how to
a
use
lie.
firearms.
I don't know if this
That's
is true
a
or
lie.
not.
NRA did not play a big role in
This
that.
is just historical fact. But
It's
Don,
not historical fact.
the part that I
Just
find
because you say it's historical fact,
the part that
it's
I
not
find
historical
insulting
fact.
is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have
The
gone
fact
through
that I find
civil rights
insulting
revolution
is
in this
that
country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I
know
have
the
a different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without
shouldn't
me
express your
regarding
views,
you as a
but I think
black
it's
man,
insulting that
but
you're
me
sitting
regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
that you're
That's what I
sitting
think we should
here,
see.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
Whatever ethnicity I am,
about
I'll
what
tell
it's
you.
like to be black.
Whatever
in America.
ethnicity I am,
I'm
I'll tell
sorry.
you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white, doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
the
but I think
content
you should-
of the
if you're gonna
ideas.
do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a
I
fair
think-
way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? We appreciate you coming on.
With
Thank
due
you for
respect,
that.
Don, I look forward to
Thank you very
continuing
much.
that
I appreciate
conversation.
it. We'll
Thank
continue
you.
the conversation.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Pop.
We'll talk about China.
Yes, let's talk about
Next
China.
time you come.
Wow, that was interesting. That was interesting. If you have any suggestions, comment them down below. Any thoughts on the video, comment them down below, and I'll see you on the next one.